morning, friends. It is Wednesday. It is May 13th, and it is the third to last day of school. So, I want to remind you all that your describing your classmates Google form is due today. So, make sure you have that done because I will be using, at the end of the day, I'm going to take all of your responses and use it for something that's a secret. But if your response isn't there, then I won't be able to use your response for the secret. And trust me, you're going to want me to be able to use your response because the result is going to be really, really cool. So let's keep on reading Judy Blume, Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing. Yesterday we stopped on page 94. We're going to try to read all the way to chapter 10. So we're going to read all the way to chapter 9 and then through chapter 9 to chapter 10 so that tomorrow will be our last day of reading Judy Blume, Tales of Fourth Grade Nothing. And then on Friday we'll do just a regular morning meeting. Okay, here we go, page 94. Okay, kid, all ready now? The cameraman said. You right over to me. Fudge didn't do it. Mr. Vince was losing his patience. Hatcher, he hollered, you get that son of yours to ride my toddle bike or I'm taking my whole account away from you and your agency. May I remind you, George, using Fudge was your idea, not mine, my father said. Forget about whose idea it was, Hatcher. He's your kid. You better get through to him. Now. I have an idea, my father said. He walked to a corner of the room and beckoned to the others. Mr. Denberg and Mr. Vincent gathered around him, along with the cameraman and Janet. They looked like a bunch of football players huddled together talking about the next play. Soon my father called me. Peter, would you join us, please? Sure, Dad, I said. What is it? Peter, we want you to ride the toddle bike for us, to show Fudge how it's done. But he already knows how to ride, I said. Didn't you see him zooming around? He won't do it for the cameras, though, my father explained, so we need your help. Will I be in the commercial too? I asked. Well, the toddle bike is really for very young children, Mr. Denberg said. Otherwise, we'd have you do it in a minute. I got the message. It was like buying the shoes at Dr. Brown, like Dr. Brown's office. They were going to use me to get Fudge to do what they wanted them to do. What they wanted him to do. I wondered how anybody would ever manage my brother without my help. I walked over to Fudge and told him I was going to ride the toddle bike. Get off, I said. Fudge held onto the bike. No, mine. It's not yours, my father told him. But Fudge wouldn't move for anything. He closed his eyes and screamed. He can scream loud when he tries. So my father had to pull him off of the toddle bike. Fudge kicked and kept screaming, and I'll bet Mr. Vincent was sorry he ever spotted my brother in the first place. I got on the toddle bike. It was so small my knees practically touched the ground, but I managed to ride it around to see just where the cameraman told me to. See how nice Peter can ride the toddle bike, Janet said. Here, Peter, come have an Oreo. You did that so well you can have 2 or 3 if you want. Fudge stopped screaming. Me, he said. What? My father asked him. Me, ride, me. You can ride as well as Peter can, You can't ride as well as Peter can, Mr. Denberg said. Can so, Fudge told him. I don't think so, Mr. Denberg said. You already had a turn. You didn't do what I told you to do. Me! You want to try it again? My father asked. Again, Fudge said. Again. Well, I don't know, Mr. Denberg said. Well, Mr. Vincent said, chewing on his cigar. Well, the cameraman said, scratching his head. Please, Fudge begged. I never heard my brother say please before. Mr. Denberg said, okay, we'll give you one more chance. Fudge ran to the toddle bike. I got off, and he jumped on. Now? He asked Mr. Denberg. Now, Mr. Denberg said. Ride this way, Fudge, over here towards me. Fudge did as he was told. Just like Peter, he said. See, just like Peter. Janet gave me a kiss on my cheek. You saved the day, Peter Hatcher, she said. When she wasn't looking, I wiped off my face. Her kiss was too juicy. Chapter 9, Just a Rainy Day. We are starting Chapter 9 on page 97. The next day it rained. My father asked me how I'd like to go to the movies. Just me? I asked. No, all three of us, he said. Fudge is very young to go. I said, don't you think so? Maybe. But I can't think of anything else to do with him, and that will take up a few hours. You could give him some socks, I suggested. You know how he loves to play with your socks. Socks won't last a whole afternoon, my father said. That's why I thought of the movies. What do we see, Dad? My father checked his New York magazine. A Bear's Life is playing in the neighborhood. How does that sound? What's it about? I asked. A Bear's Life, I guess, my father said. It's rated G. I was thinking of a good western with lots of action, or else a picture rated R where you can't get in if you're under 17 unless you're with your parents. But my father had made up his mind. A Bear's Life it was. I suggested that my father get Fudge cleaned up because that by then he was looking kind of messy. I don't think my father even put him in his pajamas last night. He's been wearing the same polo shirt ever since my mother left yesterday morning. By 1 o'clock, we were ready to go. All three of us wore our raincoats and rubbers, and my father took his big black umbrella. One thing about New York is it's hard to get a cab when it's raining, but the movie theater wasn't very far away. My father said the walk would do us all good. There were lots of puddles. It was really pouring. I like to walk in the rain, especially if it isn't too cold out. It feels nice when it wets your face. I jump over the puddles. My father avoided them too, but not Fudge. He jumped right into every one and splashed around like a little duck. By the time we got to the movie theater, the bottoms of his pants were soaked. My father took him into the men's room. He stuffed a bunch of paper towels up each pant leg so Fudge wouldn't have to sit around wet. At first, Fudge complained, but when my father bought him a big box of popcorn, he forgot about his stuffed pants. Right after we got settled in our seats, a big boy sat down in front of Fudge, so he had to change seats with my father. Now he was on the aisle, I was in the middle, my father was on the other side. When the lights dimmed, Fudge said, "Ooh, dark." I told him, "Be quiet, you can't talk in the movies." "Okay, Peter," he said. That's when he started throwing his popcorn. At first I didn't notice, but I wondered why people in front of us were turning around every second. Then I hear Fudge whisper, "Pow, pow, pow," and I saw him throw a handful of popcorn. I poked my father. "He's throwing popcorn," I whispered. My father reached across me and tapped Fudge on the leg. "If you throw one more piece of popcorn, I'm going to take it away from you." "No throw," Fudge said very loud. "Shh," the people said in front of us. "Shh," Fudge said back to them. Uh-oh, I wouldn't want to take Fudge to the movies. "You see," I told my father, "he's too young for the movies. He doesn't understand." But from the moment the first bear came on the screen, Fudge sat still and watched. After a while, I forgot about him and concentrated on the movie. It was much better than I thought it would be. It showed all these bear cubs and how they live. I'm not sure when I realized that Fudge was gone. I guess it was when I turned to ask him if he had any popcorn left. I had already finished mine and was still hungry. I was really surprised to see he wasn't there. And I mean, one minute he was sitting right next to me, and the next minute he was gone. "Hey, Dad," I whispered to my father. "He's gone." "What?" my father asked. Fudge isn't in his seat." My father looked over. "Where did he go?" "I don't know. I just noticed he was gone." "Let me out, Peter. I'll find him. Should I come too?" "No, you can sit here and watch the rest of the picture. He's probably wandering around the candy counter." I stood up to let my father out. I wonder what my mother would think if she knew Fudge was lost at the movies. A few minutes later, the picture stopped, right in the middle of the scene. The soundtrack trailed off like a broken record. All the lights came on. The audience let out a groan. Ugh. Some kids calling, "Boo! Boo!" Then my father and two ushers and a man in a suit came over to me. "He was sitting right here," my father told them, pointing to the empty seat in the aisle. "Well," the man said in the suit said, "we've checked the restrooms in the office. He's not behind the candy counter. We'll have to search him. We'll have to search the theater." He kept his hands around his mouth and shouted, "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? We'll continue with our film in one moment. But first we have to find a 3-year-old boy answering to the name of Fudge." Some people laughed when the man said his name. I guess Fudge doesn't sound funny if you're not used to it. I thought, maybe he's been kidnapped. What would my mother be mad? That crazy kid, you can't even take him to the movies. Then I thought, Who'd want to kidnap him anyway? What should I do, Dad? Why don't you walk up and down the aisles and call him, Peter? Okay, I said. Here, Fudge. I started down my aisle. I sounded like I was calling a dog. Come out, Fudge. Come on out, Fudge. When I got down to the first row and called, Here, Fudge, he popped out at me. He scared me bad. I yelled, Oh! Hi, Peter, he said. Hey, found him. I called. I found him. I found him. Here he is. Then I turned to my brother. You dope, what are you doing all the way down here? And why are you sitting on the floor? Wanted to touch the bears, Fudge said. But bears are all gone. He spread out his arms and said, All gone again. My father and the ushers and the man in the suit ran to us. Fudge, my father said, scooping him up, are you all right? He wanted to pet the bears, I said. Can you beat that? Well, I guess we can continue the picture now, the man in the suit said. He cupped his hands around his mouth again. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Our young man has been found safe and sound. Now we return to the conclusion of A Bear's Life. My father carried Fudge back to our seats. He held him on his lap for the rest of the show. I guess he wasn't taking any more chances. Later, when we got home, my father explained to Fudge that movies are like TV. It's just a picture and there's nothing to touch. Fudge listened, but I don't know whether believed my father. I had the feeling he still thought those bears were in the theater somewhere. I made up my mind that I would never take my little brother to the movies. Never. At least not until he was 9 or 10. My father said he was going to cook us something special for dinner to celebrate finding Fudge in the movies. I thought that was really strange because, as far as I know, my father can't cook anything. He doesn't even know where my mother keeps the peanut butter, the dishes, or the pots and pans. Luckily for him, I was there to show him. What are you going to cook, Dad? A super duper omelet, he said. Omelet? I'm not sure me and Fudge like omelets. You'll like this one, my father said, humming as he gathered the ingredients together. Get me a big frying pan, Peter. Okay, I said. I gave it to him. He melted some butter in it. What's going in the super duper omelet? I asked, while Fudge sat on the floor banging 2 pot covers together. Well, the eggs, of course, my father said. Omelets are made of eggs. What else? I asked. Oh, I think I'll make it a mushroom omelet. Eggs and mushrooms? I said. Yes, you'll love it. I'm not so sure. You'll see, Peter, my father said. I set up the table, and while my father cooked, I even put Fudge in his booster chair. When the omelet was done, my father brought it to us. He was still humming. That's some big omelet, I said when I saw it. It filled up the whole frying pan. How many eggs did you use? About a dozen, my father said. Mom only cooks one at a time, I told him. When you taste this, you'll know why I used them all up. You mean it's that good? I asked. Go on, my father said as he served me. Taste it. I took a bite. It was awful, the worst thing I'd ever ate in my life. But my father was standing there grinning at me. I didn't want to hurt his feelings. Well, he said. It's nice, I told him, swallowing a chunk whole. I washed it down with a glass of milk. You see, your mother ought to experiment more. Then you'll learn to eat a lot of different things. I don't think Mom ever made me a mushroom omelet. Oh, my cat's right here. My father put some on Fudge's plate. Kitty. Then he served himself. Fudge shoved a lot in his mouth at once. I waited, figuring he'd choke on it. Instead, he said, Ooh, good. My father beamed. Fudge wasn't smart enough to fool my father. So he must have really liked it. But that kid can eat flowers and swallow teeth. But that kid can eat flowers and swallow teeth. Wouldn't know much about omelets anyway. Then my father sat down and tasted his super duper concoction. He not only choked on it, he spit it out. Oh no, this is awful. Something went wrong. Maybe the eggs were rotten. Mom just bought them on Thursday, I said. Maybe it's the mushrooms then, my father said. Maybe it's how you cooked it, I suggested. My father jumped from the table and threw the mushroom omelet into the garbage. Fudge started to cry. Want more? Want more? No, my father told him. It wasn't any good. Fudge screamed, Eat it or wear it, eat it or wear it. He flung a spoon across the room. It hit my mother's favorite plant. The dirt spilled all over the kitchen floor. Now you stop that, my father yelled at Fudge. I'm going to make us nice peanut butter sandwiches. Then you're going to have a bath. Your mommy's coming home tomorrow, and we're going to show her How well Daddy managed all by himself. Peter, where does your mother hide the peanut butter? After supper, my father bathed Fudge. The only thing he decided not to do were the dishes. He stacked them in the sink and left them for my mother. On Sunday afternoon, we drove out to the airport to meet my mother's plane. On the way there, my father said, "Wouldn't it be fun if we kept all the things we did over the weekend a secret, just between the three of us, kind of like a man's secret?" I agreed not to say a word. And my mother was so glad to see us, she didn't even mention the dirty dishes in the sink. 6 weeks later, we were watching TV one night when the new Toddle Bite commercial came on. "That's me," Fudge said. My mother looked up from the book she was reading. "He does look like you, Fudge, but that's not really you." "Oh, yes," Father said. "That's me, see?" My mother squinted and looked harder. "You know, Warren," she told my father, "he really does look like Fudge." Then she laughed. "Imagine another little boy like Fudgy." It's Fudge, all right," I said. "It's Fudge, all right," my brother repeated. "We didn't tell you, dear," my father said. "We thought that you'd like to be surprised. But that is Fudge." "What?" my mother said, like she couldn't believe it. "You see, Mom," I began, "remember that weekend you went to visit Aunt Linda?" Then I stopped and thought about all the things my mother didn't know, like the puddles Fudge splashed in, and the paper towels up his pants, and how he wanted to touch the bears, and the mushroom omelet, and Mr. Vincent and his big cigar, and Janet with her goldfish crackers. And I looked at my father, and I started to laugh. So did he. We're going to stop right there. We have one last chapter. It is chapter 10 called Dribble, and that is on page 108. You guys have a wonderful Wednesday, and I can't wait to talk to you on our Google Meet.